Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 13, Text 13. Anyonya-vitta-vyatiṣaṅga-vṛddha vaira-anubandhaḥ vivahan mithaś adhvany amuṣminn uru-kṛcchra-vitta bādhopasargair viharan vipannaḥ anyonya-vitta-vyatiṣaṅga-vṛddha vaira-anubandho vivahan mithaś adhvany amuṣminn uru-kṛcchra-vitta bādhopasargair viharan vipannaḥ anyonya-vitta-vyatiṣaṅga-vṛddha vaira-anubandho vivahan mithaś adhvany amuṣminn uru-kṛcchra-vitta bādhopasargair viharan vipannaḥ anyonya-vitta-vyatiṣaṅga-vṛddha vaira-anubandho vivahan mithaś adhvany amuṣminn uru-kṛcchra-vitta bādhopasargair viharan vitta-vyatiṣaṅga-vṛddha vaira-anubandho vivahan mithaś adhvany amuṣminn uru-kṛcchra-vitta bādhopasargair viharan vipannaḥ. This verse has to be examined in relationship to the previous verses of this 13th chapter. In the previous chapters, we read about the wonderful character of Jadbharat. Over here, Jadbharat is instructing King Rahugana. Jadbharat was, in his previous birth, the emperor of the whole planet. At one time, the whole planet was called Bharatvarsha. But because of his having developed an attachment for deer, for baby deer, he had to take his birth in the family of a deer. But he did not have to stay long in the body of a deer because he had done devotional service in the past and he could realize the cause of his suffering. Krishna explains when a little bit of devotional service done does not go in vain. So he soon took his birth in the family of a Brahmana in which he was known as Jadbharat. In this birth, he was determined to not get entangled in any way at all. So he was acting in society as if he was deaf and dumb. And on one occasion, he was acting deaf and dumb and he was tolerating all the insults and criticisms of other members of society. When you become a devotee of the Lord, when you start to follow some principles, you get criticized by at least some members of society. Wherever Jadbharat would go, they would say, "Look at this deaf man, look at this dumb man. He's a fool, he's come around us." So on one occasion, when King Rahugana was going to listen to a spiritual discourse, and he was being carried in a palanquin, his palanquin carriers needed additional help to go at a faster speed. Jadbharat was well built, tall, broad shoulders, strong arms. His hands would come right to his knees. When Prabhupada first came to your country, he saw at the airport these Russians carrying big suitcases. So he commented to his secretary, these Russians are really strong. So Jadbharat was very well built, so he was a natural person who could help carry the palanquin so the palanquin could move faster. And Unlike the other palanquin carriers who were Sudras, Jadbharata was a Brahmana. Brahmana is a friend of all living entities. In the third canto of the Bhagavatam, Devahuti asked Kapila Dev to describe what are the qualities of a devotee of the Lord. So the Lord replied, Titikshva karunikaha surda sarvadhainam ajata sattva santa sadva sadhu bhushana. He described this famous verse which describes the qualities of a devotee. One of the qualities is surda sarvadhainam. What is the meaning of this? Friend of all living entities. Can you say that for these other so-called religionists and other materialists? Are they a friend of other living entities? Even the best Christian, for example? No, how can you be a friend of all living entities if you want to have animals on your dining table? So, Jadbharata was so cautious, he did not even want to step on an ant. As a result, the speed of the palanquin, instead of going faster, became slower. And the king got angry. Why is the palanquin going slow? So the Sudha carriers got nervous. They said, no, I'm not the cause. This man is the cause. And naturally the king was passionate. So he started chastising this. Initially, Jadbharata tolerated the chastisement. But then he began to speak. As it is said, a learned man is recognized not by how beautiful he looks, but by how he speaks. A person may look very handsome, but if he doesn't speak properly, he's a fool. On the other hand, a person may externally look very unhandsome, but if he speaks the message of God, he is beautiful. So somebody who was initially perceived as a fool actually turned out to be a very enlightened personality. And King Rahuna could realize that this man is not a fool, but he's a self-realized soul. So he fell at his feet and begged forgiveness for his offense. One has to be very careful of Vaishnava aparadha. So King Rahuguna knew the danger of Vaishnava aparadha. So when he recognized that this man is not a fool, not a Sudra, but a very learned Brahmana, he came down from his palanquin, offered obeisances and begged forgiveness. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in explaining to Sanatana Goswami, explains how the beautiful garden of devotional service can be spoiled by Vaishnava aparadha. Advaitacharya is considered the incarnation of Mahavishnu. He was almost the age of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's grandfather. And it was Advaitacharya's prayers, along with Haridas Thakur, for the Lord to appear that caused the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always very respectful to Advaitacharya. But Advaitacharya, he was very respectful to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he knew that he was none else but Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's older brother Vishwarup took sannyas. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also took sannyas at a young age. His mother, Sachimata, was not so happy with Vishwarup. So within her mind, she always had a little bit of anger towards Advaitacharya. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew this mentality of his mother. So he said, as long as my mother doesn't apologize to Advaitacharya for her offensive attitude, she will not get love of God. And Advaitacharya would say, my God, she is the mother of the Lord of the universe. How can she be offensive? So one day, when Advaitacharya was offering his obeisances to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his mother came from behind, touched his feet, took the dust from his feet, and touched it on his forehead. So, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw his mother begging forgiveness from Advaitacharya for her slightly offensive mentality, he was very pleased. He gave this example to show how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very concerned, even though his mother was just thinking that Advaitacharya has influenced my sons to take sannyas. Durvasa Muni, when he went to the Lord and begged forgiveness for his offenses towards Amrish Maharaj, the Lord said, I can't forgive you. My devotees reside in my heart, and I reside in their heart. And then he had to ultimately apologize to Durvasa Muni. So there's so many other examples that all go to show the importance of avoiding Vaishnava aparadha, and if we do commit an aparadha, to atone for it. Just like we saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu even asking his mother to apologize for her offense. So King Rahugana was very intelligent. He fell at the feet of Jadbharat because he had chastised him initially. He had called him a fool. So then he took shelter of Jadbharat. Then Jadbharat began to explain the philosophy like Rahugana is asking questions to the right personality, namely Jadbharat. Now another thing that we see, a Jadbharat as a Brahmana is anxious to preach. A Brahmana should be anxious to preach. If a Brahmana doesn't preach, then all his saintly qualities disappear. In the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's a nice example in this connection.
В 4-й песне Бхагаватам есть замечательный пример в этой связи.
But if we have few small holes in the bottom of the bucket, will the water remain or it will leak out? Will it leak out or remain? It will leak out. So Bhagavatam says in the 4th canto that just like a bucket full of water, if it has holes in the bottom, the water will leak out. Similarly, a Brahmana who doesn't preach, all his good qualities will leak out. So a Brahmana must preach. He must transmit the knowledge that he has received. Jadbharat over here has been described as a Brahmana who is anxious to preach. So after having described the philosophy that he gave in chapter 11, in more detail in chapter 12, in chapter 13, Jadbharata describes the following scene. He compares the material world to a big forest, and how the living entity goes into this forest and he gets attacked by different plunderers. Just like in olden days, people would voyage to different parts of the world to discover new paradises for business. Did the Russians also do that? You know how America was discovered. There was a man called Christopher Columbus. He was setting out for India because there was a lot of wealth in India, and he ended up in a country which is today called America. When he landed there, he thought he was in India. So he called them Indians. So later on they discovered, no, there is another Indian. So those Indians in America, North America, are called Red Indians. So there used to be many people who would previously go on expeditions to discover new places for wealth, business, etc. So when the living entity goes into the material forest, he gets attacked by different plunderers, namely the senses. And these senses misguide him. That's the business of the senses, to misguide you. You may say, okay, I want to practice spiritual life, but the senses will pull you in a different direction. Just like if you're sitting on a chariot that is being drawn by different horses, and you don't have control of the reins of the horse, then at any time you can be thrown off the chariot. So Jadbharat describes that sometimes a man may jump in a shallow river. When you devotees go to Mayapur, I see all of you go swimming. Right now in Mayapur, they have floods. They have so much water that the water has come to the knee level of Radha Madhav Devi. So you won't be able to swim now. But many times, devotees, whenever they get a chance, they go swimming. Wow. So if you jump in a river, which is not very deep, then when you jump, what happens? You hit your head to the hard rock and it cracks. So Jadbharat says, the foolish entity is struggling in this dense forest of material enjoyment. And what happens? He gets attacked by the plunderers who are misguiding him. He gets attacked by the jackals and the tigers. You want to know who the jackals and the tigers are? What does Jadbharat mean by jackals? It's not me, it's Jadbharat, I'm just repeating. You want to know?
Хотите узнать?
Who knows what Jadbharat refers to, jackals and tigers? I feel embarrassed in saying it. So Jadbharat says, the living entity, when he gets to the dense forest, he gets misguided by his senses. The senses are always all pulling him in different directions. And he gets attacked by the jackals and the tiger, who are only interested in one thing: my sense enjoyment. Doesn't matter how you get it, but I must get it. And then the poor living entity in the dense forest of enjoyment, he gets completely misled And his position is compared to a man who jumps in a river thinking it's deep, but then he finds out it's not deep and it cracks his head. Vidyapati is a great Vaishnava poet. He talks about the so-called material happiness. He says material happiness that you can get in the material world is like a drop of water that you give to a thirsty man in the desert. When you're in the desert, you get very thirsty. So when you go in the desert, you need gallons of water, not a drop of water. A drop of water, what's it going to do for you? When you're hungry and somebody just gives you one morsel of pleb for your prasad, what's it going to do? You say, Katisha. You say, I want more. So, Vidyapati's conclusion is, doesn't matter how hard you try, the maximum happiness you get is no more than a drop of water given to a thirsty man in the desert. When was this Bhagavatam written? Yesterday? 10 years ago? 5,000 years ago. But what is being described in this verse is what is happening today. The Bhagavatam is so accurate in its predictions. Take for example the first line of this verse. Anyonya-vitta-vyatiṣaṅga-vṛddha. So it says, due to monetary transactions, relationships become strained and end in enmity. Most of the fights take place, enmity takes place. Why? Due to monetary dealings. As long as you have money, the family members are united. Sweet. And when you don't have money, get out. You're not needed in the house anymore. In the Bhagavatam, there's a story of a miserly man. He was a very miserly man, but he was very rich. But he would never give one kopeck to anyone. He would give it all to himself. So gradually, he made so many enemies. Wives, children, etc. In the Bhagavatam it is said, a moneyed man makes many different types of enemies. If you are moneyed, the thieves become your enemy. Thieves are not the enemy of a poor man. They are only after the rich people. You only see a big man carrying a gunman, which is not a poor man. Who travels in a bulletproof Mercedes? A rich man, not a poor. So the thieves become your enemy. They say, why should you have so much money? We should share your wealth. Then the government becomes their enemy. The income tax department. They say, why should you keep so much money? Give us 40% tax. In many countries of the world, they have a death tax also. You pay tax even at death. You know what is this death tax?
No, must be.
Suppose you die with $1 million. The government says, okay, 30% of this is tax. So it goes to the government as death in America, India, many countries. So then, the relatives become your enemy. They say, my father has so much money, I must also get a share of it. So many people become your enemies. So this miserly man made a lot of enemies. And gradually, by the will of providence, he lost all his wealth. So when he lost his wealth, initially he was in a state of shock. But then that shock turned into pleasure. When he realized that everything is temporary, he took shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda. So, Adhvani is explaining here, due to monetary transactions, relationships become strained and end in enmity. This happens between husband and wife, as it is being explained here. It happens amongst different communities in a nation. If one ethnic group is rich, the other ethnic group says, no, why are they rich? I should also be rich. It happens amongst nations. So just see how accurate the Bhagavatam is. What is happening in Kali Yuga today was explained by Adhvani 5,000 years ago. Just goes to show the Bhagavatam is nothing but the compilation of God. Then the Bhagavatam in this verse is explaining that to maintain their relationship, they work very hard. It's just like you see in the mature world today, husband and wife, to maintain the standard of living, they have to work so hard, but no time for self-realization. So wars take place due to economic factors. Economic reasons, people attack each other, go to wars, do anything. The Bhagavatam has made so many other predictions that have come true. Bhagavatam has explained how in Kali Yuga there will be no justice. If you have money, you may get some justice. Bhagavatam explains how in Kali Yuga man and woman live together only as long as there's some sense enjoyment, otherwise they part. It predicted the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Buddha. So Adhvani is explaining how in the material world relationships get strained due to our endeavor to get money for sense enjoyment. So the Bhagavatam is guiding us and warning us how to act so that we can make the best use of a bad bargain. Material world is a bad bargain, but as Prabhupada used to say, make the best use of a bad. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod in Sharanagati, Thakur Bhakti Vinod wrote a prayer called Sharanagati, which means to take shelter of the Lord. So he prays to the lotus feet of an advanced Vaishnava for his mercy so that he may be able to advance spiritually. He says, please may I be able to free myself from the 6 urges, Chaya, Bega, Domi. Please may I be able to free myself from the influence of the 6 urges. What are the 6 urges? Vacha, Vegam, Manasa, Krodha, Vegam. The urges are the urge of the speech, the mind, anger, tongue, belly and genitals. These are the 6 plunderers that Jat Bharat has described that attack and misguide the living entity. So if we want to escape the influence of this illusory energy, we have to learn to control these 6 urges. And he says, Chaya dosha sodhi. Dosha means the obstacles or factors that one should avoid. Dosha also means faults. So what are the 6 faults? Rupa Goswami identifies them in Shri Updeshamrit. Atyahara prayashascha prajalpa jansangascha lolyamcha. These are the 6 doshas. Overeating or collecting more funds than required. Over-endeavoring for material objectives. Endeavor has to be there, but avoid over-endeavor. What does over-endeavor mean? Work so hard, no time for spiritual practice. Then unnecessarily talking about material subject matters. Talking about subject matters not related to Krishna. Being neglectful of the spiritual instruction and rules and regulations given for advancement. Associating with materially minded people. Of course, a certain amount of association is unavoidable. Even when a Brahmana goes to preach, he has to associate with those who are worldly minded, but not beyond muchness and lusting after material attachments. Then it says, Chaya guna deho dashe. Please may I be able to develop 6 qualities that are necessary for spiritual advancement. What are these gunas? 4 qualities. Utsaha nishtaya. Be enthusiastic in executing devotional service. Be patient in executing devotional service. Have confidence that this path of devotional service is the right path and is going to give the desired result over time. Execute devotional service with determination and give up what's unnecessary or not favorable for spiritual advancement, especially excessive association with non-devotees. And follow the spiritual guidelines given. Then he says, Chaya satsange. Please may I get the association of devotees and I may be able to chant the holy name in their association. So when we have the opportunity to associate with devotees and chant, we should an act of great fortune. Those who have the opportunity to execute devotional service in the association of devotees are very fortunate. As Prabhupada says in Updeshamrit, this ISKCON movement was started to give people an opportunity to associate with each other in executing devotional service. So whether you are a grihastha or a devotee living outside the temple or living inside the temple, take advantage of devotee association. Spiritual association helps us to remain enthusiastic. Spiritual enthusiasm helps us to remain on the right track, because if you are doing something wrong, somebody else will correct you. Spiritual association will keep reminding us about the real goal of. Therefore, Thakur Bhaktivinoda says, Chaya satsange. Please may always have the association of devotees. In this famous bhajan, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakarama Narottam Thakur in the end speaks as follows. He says, Ramachandra Sangamage Narottama Das. Narottama Das is praying for the association of an advanced devotee like Ramchandra Kaviraj. Who was Ramchandra Kaviraj? He was a grihastha. Naturally, he and his wife were very poor.
Он и его жена были очень бедными людьми.
But Ramchandra Kaviraj was a great devotee of the Lord, always absorbed in chanting the holy name. So Narottam Das Thakur prays Ramachandra's Sangha Mage Narottama Das. Narottama Das is not begging for some material benefit, but begging to have the association of an exalted devotee of the caliber of Ramchandra Kaviraj. So to summarize the verse, Jat Bharat is pointing out what we are seeing in Kali Yuga today. Exactly what's happening in Kali Yuga was pre-told in the Bhagavatam 5,000 years ago. How relationship gets strained due to money. How relatives become enemy because of money. There's so many cases where the son kills the father to take his money. What do people not do for money? Any crime they'll do as long as they can make money. So, the Bhagavatam predicts the symptoms of Kali Yuga and also gives us a solution how to get out of this. Actually, when you hear the description of this chapter, your faith in the Bhagavatam will get stronger. Because exactly what's happening today in individuals, amongst communities, amongst nations, is being explained by the Bhagavatam 5,000 years ago.
Yes.
So take advantage of Bhagavatam's advice, which is to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. And how do we take shelter? How do we take shelter? By chanting the holy names of the Lord. You're taking the process of devotional. As Lord Chaitanya says in Chaitanya Bhagavat, always chant. Bolo Krishna. Bolo Krishna means chant the holy name of Krishna. Bhajo Krishna. Worship the Supreme Lord. And Koro Krishna. Learn about Krishna. Learn about Krishna from Vedic scriptures. So that's all you need to do. You don't have to change your ashram. You don't have to change your position. Bolo Krishna, chant the names of Krishna. Bhajo Krishna, worship Krishna. And learn about Krishna from Vedic scriptures. So this Bhagavatam class and the Gita class is an attempt to learn about Krishna from Vedic scriptures. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.